Hey team, I'm Corey. Let's learn and build together. Today I want to talk about package manager lock files. In particular, I'm going to focus on the two languages and package managers that I have the most experience with, Ruby and Rust. Lock files are an important part of the cargo and bundler designs. In Ruby, we have the Gemfile.lock, and in Rust, we have Cargo.lock file. These files specify the exact versions of your dependencies that you have installed. When you add a dependency to Cargo or Bundler, you specify a range of versions that your code can work with. In Bundler, you might add a range like this, arrow 1.1.0. This means that you need at least version 1.1.0, and that we also allow any version where the last digit is higher. So arrow 1.1.0 also allows version 1.1.1, or even 1.1.99. Cargo does a very similar thing, but you don't need the little arrow operator, and this is Cargo's default behavior. These range versions live in either the Cargo.toml file or the gem file, depending on which language you're doing. And when you install the dependencies for the first time, a lock file is created. This lock file lists the exact version of the dependencies that were installed. So if your version range was the arrow 1.1.0, the lock file might specify 1.1.99 if 1.1.99 was the latest matching version at the time you installed. If you committed your lock file to version control, any other developers on your project would get the exact same version of the dependencies. Even if 1.1.100 comes out, without updating the lock file, everyone will get the same 1.1.99 when they install dependencies. And this can be really powerful. It allows all the developers to have the same version of every dependency. Having and committing a lock file can eliminate a whole class of issues in dependency management. And when you want to start using a new version, you have your tool of choice update the lock file to a new compatible version. And every developer will install that new version when they pull the lock file from version control. What I described above is the best practice for applications, where the final result is an application to run. Libraries are a bit different though. See, in a library, you don't have as much control over what versions of dependencies are installed. This is because these two package managers do not take lock files into account when installing a library. Libraries only use the version ranges in your Cargo.toml file or gemspec to decide which version of dependencies to install. This is because both of these package managers try to install dependency versions that work for your whole tree of dependencies. This is more exaggerated in Ruby, where you can only have a single version of any dependency. So let's say we have 3 gems. We're going to dive into Ruby for a second. And gems are what Ruby calls packages. We have a base library that has no dependencies. Library A depends on base library greater than 1.0, and lib.b depends on base library less than 1.2. Since we can only have one version of base library installed in Ruby, we have to find a version that matches the greater than 1.0 and the less than 1.2. This might be 1.2.0, which satisfies both of these ranges. If lib.b depended on less than 1.0 though, we'd have a problem. There isn't any version that can match greater than 1.0 and less than 1.0 at the same time. Here Bundler will blow up saying it can't find any matching dependencies. Cargo is a little more lenient here in that it allows multiple versions of the same dependency to be installed, though you might run into issues later if you try to pass a struct from one version to a different version because those types aren't going to match. And since libraries don't use the lock file for resolving dependency trees, there is a debate on whether you should include the lock file in version control when you're making a library. Until recently, the Cargo team's advice was to commit lock files for applications, but not for libraries. This is so that when CI runs, it will always pull the latest possible version of your dependencies. This lets you know what a user who just installed your package might get if they installed it for the first time. It can help to find incompatibilities and bugs with the newest version of your dependencies. But of course, this does mean that different developers working on the same project won't have the exact same versions of things. Each individual will have their own local lock file. And Cargo recently amended their stance to say that it's okay to commit the lock file for libraries too, and to consider it for each project individually. This is a very reasonable answer because each project is different. On some projects, keeping all the developers on the same version might outweigh the benefits of potentially finding things earlier in CI. The don't commit for libraries advice also kind of implies that you have a working CI that can potentially catch these issues early. If you don't have, then some of the benefits of not committing your lock files are lost. And on the flip side, it's possible to get the benefits of not committing your lock file to version control while still actually committing it. I recently heard of a project that commits their lock file, but also has an automation that periodically updates it to the latest versions of all the dependencies. Or a different project that has 2 CI jobs running, one that uses the committed lock file and one that doesn't and grabs the latest versions every time. I like this new advice from the Cargo team in that it acknowledges that there are different trade-offs that might not apply to everyone. But I did kind of like the old advice in that it was a bit more universal. Universal standards are nice in that they can reduce the number of things you have to think about when you're starting out. And I'm really glad to hear from different people around the internet and hear their tips and tricks for dealing with dependency versioning. I was firmly in the don't commit for libraries camp, and I think I still lean that way. But I'm very intrigued by the idea of committing a lock file and having automation update it on some cadence. I think I'll play with that some more sometime. And that's all I've got today on the topic of lock files. I'm excited to come back to this and talk about cargo workspaces in the future. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you are really enjoying my content, I would love if you head over to my GitHub sponsors page and considered sponsoring me so I can keep on making this content. Thanks, team. Have a good one. Keep on learning. Bye.